German army march.
Soviet Union, some in 1943. Tanks lining up in thousands, as far the eye can see. Ready for the onslaught, ready for the fight. Waiting for the access to march into the track. Minds are placed in darkness, in the cover of the night. Waiting to be triggered when the time is right. Imminent invasion, imminent attack. Once the battle started, there's no turning back. The end of the Third Reich draws near. Its time has come to an end. The end of an era is here. It's time to attack.
The motherland, the German army march. Comrades, side by side, stop the Nazi charge. Panzers on Russian soil, thunder in the east. 1 million men at war, Soviet blood unleashed.
Fields of Prokhorovka, with the heat of battle burned, suffered heavy losses, and the tide of war was turned. Driving back the Germans, fighting on four fronts. Hunt them out of Russia, out of Soviet land. Reinforce the front line, was the axis to retreat. Sending all the reasons, securing the defeat. Soldiers of the Union, broke the citadel. Ruins of an army, axis rest in hell. The end of the Third Reich draws near. Its time has come to an end.
Good day folks, and welcome back to another hot episode of my Red Dawn campaign of Hearts of Iron 4. Hot because even though in winter 1942 to 1943 the endless fields of Ukraine and forests of Belarus were covered by a thick layer of white snow, the SDAVKA decided to give no rest to the Axis invaders. By early January 1943, the tide has turned against Germany and her allies. The destruction of more than 57 German divisions in the battles of the Lower Dnieper forced Spain and Romania to deploy additional troops along the newly established front line. Second-rate divisions that would prove to be simply no match for the battle-hardened Soviet soldiers. Even though the Axis southern flank became weaker and weaker as January turned into February, the SDAVKA had other plans for the upcoming winter offensive. While skilled workers and civilian engineers worked hard to repair the badly damaged Ukrainian infrastructures, Chernyakhovsky's 1st Tank Army was tasked of expanding the Mozy bridgehead, a task that was rendered impossible not only by the adverse weather conditions, but also by a terrain filled with woods and swamps. Despite the latter being completely frozen, the lack of any proper road network made the advance terribly painful. It was only after 2 weeks of heavy marches that the area fell once again under Soviet control. As winter became spring, and as the thaw transformed every road into a sea of mud, making any offensive operation a complete suicide, the Red Army made good use of this operational pause to reinforce its ranks and stockpile supplies for the next big push, codenamed Operation Gudovich. The plan was simple: breach the enemy lines between Bobruisk and Salihorsk, conduct a deep penetration with the armored spearhead supported by the cavalry on their flanks, and reach the Baltic Sea around Memel. In this way, the predominantly German troops still stationed in Belarus would be cut off from every land-based mean of retreat, and would have to rely on their navy for transport and supplies. For this operation, the SDAVKA spared no expenses in terms of reserves and air power. A massive air fleet composed of 400 fighters and 1,000 between close air support and level bombers was transferred in the liberated airfields of southern Belarus and immediately given order to gain air superiority over the region and to harass the enemy ground troops. With the airspace under control of the Soviet Air Force, on May 9th Operation Gudovich begun, and immediately the thinly held German lines collapsed under the devastating fury of the Red Army. Timoshenko's 2nd Cavalry Army, striking along the right wing, quickly exploited the breakthrough and liberated Minsk on May 16th, with element of the 2nd Armored Division of General Ilyushenko's 5th Tank Army reaching the Baltic coast south of Riga already on May 20th. With the corridor now closed, both sides rushed to bring reinforcement in attempting to consolidate the new positions. On May 31st Chernyakhovsky's 1st Tank Army finally emerged from the swampy terrain south of Salihorsk, and as the enemy resistance simply faded away, the vanguard of the Siberian 29th Motorized Rifle Division liberated Bialystok on June 5th. In their mad rush towards Königsberg, however, the lack of an adequate infantry support meant that a local German counterattack efficiently severed the Soviet lines, interrupting communications and supplies with Chernyakhovsky's troops. It was only 1 week later that a continuous line was restored, and the Soviet armored and motorized divisions began pushing northward in an effort to annihilate the enemy troops trapped in Courland. Pressured from all sides, the German and Romanian divisions collapsed and began a hasty retreat toward the Lithuanian port of Ljepoja, hastily defended by 25 divisions. As the port fell after 3 failed attempts on June 22nd, further north Ilyushenko's tankers began the offensive to cut off the enemy units from every mean of communication and supply by sea. On May 29th, the Battle of Riga began, and 3 days later the burning Latvian capital once again fell under Soviet control, and a futile German counterattack was repulsed with very few losses. Once again, however, as the foot infantry lagged deep behind the armored spearheads, the German divisions trapped in Estonia mounted several counter-offensives which successfully, albeit temporarily, isolated Ilyushenko's vanguard in Tallinn from the rest of the front line. With only the fortified port of Narva still in German hands, the SDAVKA ordered the second phase of Operation Gudovich to commence on June 16th. Optimistic reports reached the Soviet high command day after day in Moscow, and an even more excited Stalin believed that victory was at hand. A difficult terrain joined by the refusal of the Axis troops to surrender prolonged the fighting in the region until July 18th. Day in which 33 German divisions were annihilated in a furious battle south of Pskov. Soviet casualties for Operation Gulevich alone accounted for roughly 96.000 between killed and missing in action, but were safely compensated by the irreplaceable losses of almost 800.000 men on the Axis side. With the sun shining over the liberated Belarusian fields, the SDAVKA rushed the troops for a new offensive aimed at cutting off the southern wing of the Axis front. But I think I talked for too long now. It's better for you to enjoy the video and see how, under the leadership of Field Marshal TN92, the Red Army achieved its last goal. Take care guys, and stay tuned for the 1944 upcoming offensives. There are big surprises waiting for you.
Разведчик зорок, наводчик смел, врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, потом откроем сокрушительный огонь. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, потом откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Мы идем средь полей золотистых, и бойцы молодые поют. Песня звонкая артиллеристов, ты звучи, как салют.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, потом откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Для защиты свободы и мира есть гранаты, готова шрапнель. Наши пушки и наши мортиры бьют без промаха цель.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Если враг к нам захочет ворваться, боевая настанет пора. По-геройски за Родину драться будут все номера.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, потом откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Быстрой хваткой и четкой работой артиллерия наша горда. Нашей коннице, нашей пехоте мы поможем всегда.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Нашим танкам дорогу проложит, наших пушек огонь боевой. Вражью силу дотла уничтожит грозный вал огневой.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел. Врагу мы скажем, нашей Родины не тронь, а то откроем сокрушительный огонь.
Артиллеристы, точней прицел, разведчик зорок, наводчик смел.